Okay. Welcome to Facebook Live, where Mark Serwotka and myself, Fran Heathcote, are joined this evening by the group presidents of 3 groups. I'd like to introduce our panel first. We've got Jackie Green, Group President of the Ministry of Justice. We've got Steve Thorley, Group President of the Crown Prosecution Service, and James Cox, Group President of the Home Office. So thanks so much to everybody for joining us this evening, where we hope to give as many of you as possible the opportunity to raise your questions, comments and concerns, and obviously we'll try to answer as many of those as you can. If we don't get everything answered, we will make sure that there's a follow-up to that after the event. As always, I want to start by thanking you all for everything you're doing, because I know how hard reps and members are working at the moment to deliver services to the public, and so many of us are getting used to a whole new way of doing things. So tonight you're going to hear from Mark, who'll give an overview of where we are, and then following introductions by our 3 panelists, we'll get into the specific questions that have been sent in. So if you've got questions, send them in to us and we'll try to answer, as I say, as many as possible during the event. We'll aim to get finished within an hour, so it won't run on for hours on end. And we have got plenty of questions that have already been submitted. Can I remind you all to like and share this live event on Facebook? So if you go on there and tell your friends this is what you're doing, hopefully others will join as well. And because we've only got an hour, I'm going to get started straight away. So we'll start off with a question for Mark. Mark, can you update us on where we are in talks with the Cabinet Office and any decisions that have been taken since the National Executive Committee met, but were taken by the National Executive Committee, that you need to update people about?
Yeah, thanks very much, Fran, and good evening to everybody. Can I also say how delighted I am to be joined by Jackie, James and Steve. The last one of these we did with the DWP and HMRC group presidents, fantastically popular, loads of questions. I hope we get that tonight from members across the justice sector and the Home Office. And then to remind people, we'll be doing further ones of these with our leading lay negotiators from other parts of the union. Thanks to everybody also who's watching, and could I also just say in starting, Fran, we're getting thousands of people contacting the union, our fantastic reps, members, many of those raising questions, asking for us to sort things out, but increasingly people contacting the union just to say that they're pleased that they're hearing from their reps and that they're hearing from us. And I just really want to remind people at the start, if anyone's watching this, have got any issues whatsoever, or they know of any colleague at work who's worried about anything, go to the union, go to your local rep or contact our helpline, and we'll do everything we can to help. I mean, as ever, it's been an incredibly busy week, but what I wanted to focus on really is the 2 big issues that your National Executive Committee discussed when we met a few days ago. They were how we're going to deal with the next phase of the pandemic, and the increasing evidence that the government, certainly Boris Johnson's government in Westminster, is focusing on getting more and more people back to work and getting more and more shops and businesses open. And secondly, we had to consider how we were going to respond to the letter from the government that frankly has betrayed people watching this on the question of their pensions and pay. So firstly, dealing with the pandemic. We're clearly not out of the woods yet. You know, there are still over 100 people dying every day. The infection rate is still high. And despite Boris Johnson's insistence that we need to get back to some form of normality, the members who are contacting us still have very real worries. So the NEC discussed last week going into a new phase. We recognize that we've had a lot of success in national negotiations, both in departments, with private sector employers and with the Cabinet Office. But what we realize now is as the situation changes, more and more people will be raising questions as to are they safe and what can the union do for them. So last week, following the likes of the Teachers Union that has launched its 5 tests that need to be satisfied before schools can be open, our NEC decided that PCS should have its own 5 tests about what needed to be achieved for people to go back to anything like the environment we were in before. And we're going to launch these tomorrow, Fran. And I wanted to stress to people that these tests are designed to give us things to raise with employers, but more importantly, they're tests for every member and every rep in the union to look at and ask, are they being applied to me? And do they exist in my workplace or in my union branch? And if they don't, we need to know about it so we can raise it with employers. But increasingly, we need our local reps and members deciding that we are going to ensure that we demand to be safe and to campaign if needs be. So I thought it'd be useful if I quickly run through the 5 tests. The first one is there should be no wider return until our communities are safe. Now, we will define all of these tests when you see these communicated with a bit of detail, but obviously what that means is we need the infection rate to drop, we need adequate public transport, and we need proper belief that this country is safe and that people can go back to something like normality. Secondly, workplaces should only be for essential work. This is a key test because we know lots of members are telling us they're being told to go into work to do things that frankly are not required. The third test is that workplaces must be safe places. So if you're watching this and you're in MOJ or you're in DWP, where thousands of people have been in work right throughout this crisis, our test is that your workplace must be safe, and we're defining what that means. Fourthly, all staff must be individually assessed. And what we mean by this is that it's no good a workplace looking on the face of it if it's safe, if it doesn't meet every individual's requirements. So we have a quality test. So if people are from the BAME community, where there's evidence that this virus disproportionately affects members from the BAME community, there should be an individual test. There should be tests for parents who have childcare responsibilities, tests about transport to work. It must be safe for every individual. And finally, all outbreaks must be controlled. And by that, we mean if there's an outbreak in your workplace, it must be shut, it must be deep cleaned. But crucially, there must be adequate contact tracing and testing facilities in place to control the pandemic and ensure that we do not have a second wave. So those tests that we'll publicize now tomorrow and campaign for over recent days and over the coming days and weeks, we want everyone to look at and say, do those tests get met in my circumstance? And if not, make sure we know about it. The other thing, Fran, briefly to mention is pay and pensions. I mentioned last week that the government had given us a welcome concession on redundancy terms. They're not going to be cut now until the end of next March at the earliest. They also gave us an assurance that nobody should be losing their job unless a very high test is met. And that means that in every department, we're now asking employers to stop redundancies and reconsider the position. And I want to at this point make this plea to people. Many of our members are facing redundancy. There'll be some people watching this tonight working in Ealing Tax Office. That office faces closure, and we have members, brilliant members with thousands of years experience about to lose their jobs. We've launched a petition and we're asking people to contact the Chancellor of the Exchequer to reverse the decision. We'll publish that on here tonight, but can I urge anyone who's watching to sign the petition, because you could help save dozens and dozens of members' jobs on the front line. But we also said, and I'll finish on this, that on pay and on pensions, the government's position that we have to carry on paying too much money for our pension and asking us to accept a derisory increase starting at 1.5% when local government unions have already rejected 2.75% is an outrage. So we're now going to launch the campaign that members have told us they want to see, and we will be doing lots of things for people to get involved with, petitions, e-actions, asking people to get involved. So in a nutshell, Fran, another incredibly busy week for all of us, but we want to fight for fair pay and pensions, save jobs, and most importantly, everyone must ensure the 5 tests for safe working are met. And I'll pause at that.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. And obviously that's a bit of an overview of where we are nationally. I'm now going to invite the 3 group presidents just to give us a bit of an overview of what's going on in your groups. So what are the key issues for your members and how are you dealing with them? If we start with you, Jackie.
Hi, and firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the members in this forum. I think Facebook Live is an excellent way of being able to reach a wider audience, and hopefully as it goes on, more and more people will join Facebook Live events. So in the Ministry of Justice, it's quite a large department, and it will come as no surprise that for corporate MOJ, 90% of the workforce is working from home. The other 10% of the workforce who are working within buildings, they're doing so because it's their choice to do so, not because they've been stymied by the employer. The associated offices, they are the same. There's about 92% of those people able to work from home, and the employer has sought to source laptops and equipment to allow those members to work from home. It was a little bit of a slow start, but after a couple of weeks, more and more members were released to work from home, and there have been no plans in those areas to bring members back into the workplace. However, in HMCTS, which is the court service and tribunals, 26% of the workforce works from home. And that is down to a variety of reasons, one of which is that there wasn't the equipment to allow people to work from home. We've pushed the employer on this, and more equipment is being sourced, but there is a delay because of where the laptops originate. China has now a difficulty in sourcing the laptops, and it's difficult to get them into people's homes. But there is, we are still pressing the employer to continue to allow as many people as possible to work from home. And if they cannot work from home and they're not doing the frontline work, which is being inside a courtroom, then we are saying, well, those staff need to be on special leave until a point when they are furnished with the equipment. So that's really everything in HMPPS, which has had a lot of press about obviously COVID and the outbreaks in prisons. There's 5 tests which Mark has alluded to. They will be going up on the website. I know that HMPPS staff have been particularly interested, and I would encourage all people who are listening tonight to go to the website tomorrow. Tonight there are still updates, so it is useful, and it's useful as a tool for us to engage with our members as swiftly as possible. So that the things that are facing us are obviously the workforce coming back into work, and pay for everybody is always going to be an issue. And being key workers, staff are very upset to learn that the pay remit may not reflect their key worker status. So they are the things that primarily are the issues currently in the Ministry of Justice.
Okay, thanks very much, Jackie. And obviously staying with the justice sector, I'll ask Steve Thorley, who's Group President of the Crown Prosecution Service, to just give us a bit of a flavour, Steve, about what you're dealing with at the moment.
Thanks, Fran, and good evening, everyone. In the CPS, we've had quite a positive and regular dialogue with management. We've got a situation, I think, in stark contrast to colleagues in the court and tribunal service, where we've got around 90% of our members and CPS staff currently working from home. Only those, the key functions that can't be done at home, we have members in operational delivery going into the office to conduct, and that's broadly mostly uploading of media on case files. We've got a situation similar to the court service, where we've got provision, our members have got provision for DSE equipment, furniture and DSE equipment to be delivered to home, although we've got a delay, unfortunately, in CPS, and I think that's an issue that we've had with the suppliers, 2 of whom apparently, according to what I've been told recently, are in lockdown at 2 out of the 3. So that really doesn't help. But we do understand that they're trying to deliver that kit as a matter of urgency. We've had recent dialogue with management in terms of those of our members that are having to attend court, and only today I can report that we've agreed a departmental level court deployment protocol that gives our members protection if they feel that their safety is compromised in attending court, and that includes not being deployed to court if they're in a vulnerable group, or if they're living with anybody in a vulnerable group, or are caring for anybody in a vulnerable group. And it also gives somebody the right effectively to remove themselves if they feel that their safety is compromised if they've been deployed to court. And that, as I understand it, has been released on our CPS intranet today, which I think is quite a positive step in protecting our members. So that's a quick overview in terms of the issues that we've got and the dialogue that we've had with our employer. Thanks, Fran.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And obviously you've got that hot off the press that's just come out today, so very good news for members in your group. Okay, I'm going to turn now to James Cox. James is the president of the Home Office group. James, do you just want to give us a flavour of what you're dealing with?
Yeah, thanks very much, Fran. Yeah, I think the question is about what the sort of like priority and the key issues at the moment, and I suppose the curse of being a trade union rep is that everything's a priority, isn't it? And I think after the initial shock of lockdown, what I was surprised about was that how quickly we got back into the usual cycle of consulting and negotiating over terms and conditions, which we continue to do, and those sort of policies and procedures within the department. So that continues behind the scenes, but I suppose there's no getting round. Like, the main priority is obviously for us to keep our members safe at the moment, and we've been in constant contact with the department over different departmental frequently asked questions and consulting over the risk assessments that have been done. I think we've been frustrated that the department has viewed public health guidelines in some cases as the maximum provision, whereas we've obviously looked to see that as the minimum provision, as it is. We've argued for face coverings and screens and been successful in the end. And now we're demanding increases to face mask provision, and also loads of asking for temperature checks as well. I mean, I think in the Home Office we're quite lucky that many of the jobs that we've done in the department are able to be done from home, and we're looking and we're asking the department to increase that and to redeploy members into work that can be done from home. But obviously, being the department we've got a lot of our colleagues who are in work. And we've been working heavily on the risk assessments for those members going back, the social distancing measures for members. And I think in the coming weeks, as we move on, it's probably likely that there are going to be increases to the members going into the offices. And obviously the adherence and quality of those social distancing measures are going to be probably the most important thing that we're working on in the Home Office.
Okay, thanks so much, James. So you've had an overview now from all of our panel, and it's time to turn to the many questions that we're getting through from various members in various groups. As I say, we will seek to answer as many as we can in the time we've got, but if your question doesn't get answered, don't worry, we will make sure that that's picked up and we can try to get a response to you. Before we start though, there are a number of branches that just want to say hi, so we'll start with them. There are Essex Home Office, CPS London and South East branch, Bristol and Reading HMRC, Arms in the North East, North Ayrshire, Dundee Pension Centre, MOJ Midwest, Home Office Merseyside, DWP Cardiff, HMRC Ealing, and Portsdown Vectis Portsmouth. So a real cross section there across the union of people that have joined the Facebook Live event and just want to say hi. So that's a nice start for us all. Okay, so I'm going to turn now to the questions, and I'll try to sort of balance these as much as I can. Although, as you might expect, a number of the questions are similar, and in some some cases we'll try and lump those together where people have asked virtually the same question. So we're going to start, I think, with a question for Jackie from the MOJ, and it's actually a question that's come in from Sam Butcher from HMCTS, who is clearly working in security, and he said, is it possible that security staff at HMCTS could be eligible for a blue light card at any stage? And is there any information on a pay rise for security staff working in HMCTS? So Jackie, I don't know if you want to pick those two questions up, please.
Thanks, Fran. Hi, Sam. So the blue card, the blue light card, is primarily aimed at the the ambulance drivers, the police force and the fire service. So it's the emergency services who would have that. And for those of you who don't know what this card is, it gives you discounts, I understand. So while we will raise that with the employer, because it has been raised with us, not just tonight, but it has been raised before, primarily it is again aimed at those emergency services. As for the pay claim, yes, that has gone in, and it went in on Thursday, and we hope to be in talks with the employer in due course.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks so much, Jackie. And we've got a question for James next. It comes in from somebody in HMPO who asks, can the union gain clarification for us in HM passport offices on annual leave? One office is forcing that pre-booked annual leave must be taken. However, other passport offices have been allowed until recently to cancel and move their leave. So James, I don't know if you can just pick that up for us.
Thanks, Fran, and thanks, Anonymous. You're getting quite a lot of yeah, thanks. Getting a lot of questions about annual leave, and you know, I think I think we're always looking to try and improve our position on it and just make sure that we're getting it right. So I mean, we're always looking for feedback from members. I think our starting position at the moment is that members should be taking annual leave because it's really important for people's physical and mental health. And if they request that leave, they should be allowed to be taking that leave. The questions about not being able to cancel leave, and I think in our policy there's no actual right to be able to cancel leave. However, we are looking for a consistent approach across the department. However, there is provision for individual circumstances and individuals to be looked at, and for the reasons why, the specific reasons that leave's been booked, and we're looking for some the department to take a flexible and pragmatic approach, so that if people have taken it for a specific holiday that's now been cancelled, that we would expect that to be able to be that leave to be cancelled. Of course, there are circumstances managers aren't going to agree with that, and we advise members to get in touch with their local rep in order to push those their position on that.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, James. I've got a question for Mark next. Peter Smullen from the HMRC group says, do you feel that the stance on pay is a direct response to what the government see as a weakened position that PCS finds itself in after previous pay campaigns, and therefore the government feel they have the upper hand in negotiations? And Mark, I don't know if you can pick that up. Clearly we are getting a lot of questions about pay, so it would be a good one to address. Oh, Mark, you're muted.
Okay, sorry. I was going to say thanks very much for the question. The government's position on pay is clearly unacceptable. But today, Boris Johnson actually sent a message to all people in HMRC saying how marvellous everybody was for doing the job retention scheme. But we also know he's told HMRC management that you can only have between 1.5% and 2.5% unless you give up terms and conditions. Now, that's a disgraceful way to treat key workers and to treat any of our members. Do I think that's because they think we are weak because of previous ballots? No, I think it's because the government stance is to do as little as possible unless they can be forced to do more. And that's where our campaign will now become critical. There's been a lot of rumour that there's a public sector pay freeze. That hasn't materialised this year, but it's obviously something that we've got to think about for years to come. So the union's view is now is the time, given all the work we are doing, to make it clear that we want our claim addressed. We have submitted a claim for 10%. A lot of members sometimes say that sounds high, but it's only half of what people have lost over the last decade. And we want that pay claim to be negotiated with us without any strings attached. Now, what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks is that we're going to get called into talks. We'll be making it clear we cannot settle for those amounts. Then what will matter is whether members are prepared to support us in campaigning for more. And the way that we plan to do that, because of the lockdown, is not rush to any industrial action ballot. It would be very difficult to try and beat any threshold when most people are at home. It is going to be to ask people to show, first of all, they support us, signing petitions, emailing MPs. We will have a lot of activities for people to get involved in. But, and this is what Boris Johnson needs to understand, if they do not shift, if they ask you to take a pay cut when millions of people depend on our members' hard work, we will not shirk from upping the ante in our campaign, up to and including taking action if we have to. So I hope they see sense, but the single quickest way for them to give us more is for them to believe the members support the union's claim. So anyone watching tonight, please join in all our activities over the next few weeks to show them we've got that support.
Okay, thanks so much, Mark. I'm going to turn to a question now from David Walco from CPS London and South East. And he says, I see from the latest missive sent by the Oracle team that a sickness absence reason can be entered as COVID-19 from the 1st of April 2020. I was sick from the 16th to the 20th of March with what I believe to be the virus, although of course I cannot be sure due to a lack of testing. Does this mean that it is not to be counted as a COVID case and could be regarded as an ordinary sickness with regards to trigger points, etc.? If so, I would view that as grossly unfair, especially as cases in this country were being recorded much earlier than the 1st of April. So, Steve, I don't know whether there's anything you can respond in terms of that.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks for the question, David. Firstly, in relation to sickness absence for certainly COVID related and COVID suspected, all of the advice that we've agreed with management that's been sent out to line managers of the CPS has made it clear that any COVID related sickness absence is not to be counted towards attendance management measures in any way. In relation to the specific point about Oracle, I didn't realise until today, I have to say, that there is or will be a specific sort of drop-down option for COVID. I'm not surprised, but there's no reason why any previous COVID-related or COVID-suspected sickness absence can't be recorded retrospectively. I hope that answers your question, David.
Thanks, Steve. That's helpful. Okay, Jackie then. Jenny Howells-Brown asks, is it true we cannot claim the allowance from working from home in the MOJ?
Well, Jenny, we've just raised this again today in a meeting, and the employer is again going to look at whether it will be allowed, but they've made it quite clear that they don't think they will change their minds, but we have pushed on this, and this is about the 4th or 5th time I've read this in a meeting, so it is recorded there, and I've pushed back again and asked only today for them to go back and reconsider that.
Okay, thank you. And one for James now. I've managed to obtain a place for my child to attend the school hub from the 1st of June. Children in Liverpool are not returning. However, HMPO have stated that they cannot provide a key worker letter. The school have asked for evidence. Where do I stand, PCS, as I cannot work from home and HMPO won't provide the letter? Therefore, how do I attend work? And that comes from Nicola Bowden in HMPO Northwest.
Okay, thanks, Fran. Well, the current procedure in the Home Office is that the Director Generals will be, and at Directorate level, will be working out the individuals that who are in the key worker status. And they should be like sort of setting out who are doing critical and essential roles, who are required to come into the workplace, and which members of staff have caring responsibilities, and they should be able to they should be providing letters. So slightly surprised, like, so they haven't. Well, I suppose I'm not that surprised that HMPO haven't done it. But you know, if you don't have a letter that you're able to like sort of give to the school, then you're going to continue on special leave with pay. You know, until the department, until the HMPO provide that information.
Okay, thank you, James. Okay, Mark, there's a few questions here about pensions. John McHugh from Home Office in Heathrow and West London asks, could you give us an update on the FBU's court victory with regards to changes in the civil service pension scheme that may affect the current scheme, specifically affecting those of us that have been members of the pension scheme since joining the civil service in 1990? A related question would be, what was the latest with regards to the overpayment of our monthly contributions? And that sort of tallies with the question from Andrew Hewland, who also asks, and we have an update regarding the civil service pension scheme.
Yes, I mean, two things to say. On the aftermath of the FBU's legal victory, we've already had a number of meetings with the Cabinet Office, and we've met with Treasury officials as well, with other unions in the TUC. First of all, it's clear that the firefighters' victory will be affecting all public sector pension schemes. The Cabinet Office have agreed to us now that there will be detailed negotiations on the remedies to put right what was unlawful, and the union will be involved in that. But those negotiations are predicted to last for anything between 2 to 3 years because of the complexity of what's happening. And therefore, what the union is doing at the moment is obviously raising all the relevant issues. That the effect of that must be for all members, including people who subsequently leave the civil service. We're arguing that nobody can be worse off by any change, that all of our members must benefit, and crucially, that the government has to pick up the tab for paying for what it did wrong. So we're now talking to pensions experts. We have advice. The union has a pension advisor, and we're talking to other unions to ensure that we cover all of the issues, because it's very complex. Everybody's in a different position, and we want everyone to ensure that they benefit, but it's going to be a fairly long process. We're also considering, and will over the next few weeks, whether or not we need to advise certain groups of members to submit employment tribunal applications to protect their individual legal position. If that is the conclusion we come to, we will issue lots of information and advice, and the union will be helping people through that process. So basically, this is going to go on a while, but we will be taking all advice to ensure that we protect all of our members, regardless of which pension scheme they were in, or which choice they made, or indeed what they were forced into in 2015. On the contribution issue, the Cabinet Office have confirmed in the letter we got 2 weeks ago that there will be no reduction in our contributions until the end of the legal process. We believe that's grossly unfair, because they know we're overpaying every single month. So again, I can confirm that we have launched joint legal action with the Firefighters Union and other unions in order to seek a judicial review to get that decision reversed. That legal action has commenced, and as soon as we get dates for any court case or when it actually is heard, we will let members know. So that legal action is proceeding, negotiations we're preparing for, and we will issue further legal advice about individual employment tribunal applications if that's what our lawyers tell us we need to do in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We're about halfway through. Can I just remind people to keep liking and sharing the event so we get more people joining? And I'm going to go straight on with a question for James. Lee Edwards asks, is there anything in place for the Home Office to have the tax relief for working at home automatically put into place by payroll, or do we need to contact the HMRC to set this up?
I think we're taking some, we're looking into that for members on members' behalf, but it's my understanding that all tax relief needs to be individually claimed by members as opposed to put into people's salaries by lots of the employer.
Okay, so that's something we can look into, and you are taking that up, so that's really helpful. one for Jackie here. I work it's Ivor Jacobs from the MOJ Royal Courts, who asks, I work part-time at the Administrative Court, Royal Courts of Justice. Managers are calling staff into the office one day a week, even those working from home, to deal with work which doesn't seem to be critical or essential. I believe that union negotiators were trying to get HMCGS to publish a list of what they consider to be essential work. Has such a list been published? And then secondly, how can we ensure that a COVID-19 risk assessment is carried out at our court? The offices are unhygienic and have not been subject to a deep clean at any time. So there's two questions there for you, Jackie. I don't know if you can pick those both up, please.
Hi, Ivor, thanks for your questions. So in relation to the first part of your question, we have pressed the CEOs several times now in meetings and in writing to provide a list of essential key workers. That list has not been forthcoming. We haven't given up on that, and we will continue to press for that, because we are aware that there have been some people who are not doing key worker work, who have been brought into offices, and when it's been highlighted to us, we've dealt with those as soon as we've been made aware of that. The second part of your question, what we've done is we've allocated reps to each region who will be responsible for risk assessments, and it's to be hoped that tomorrow, I think, the list will be published on the PCS website. I keep selling the PCS website because that has the most up-to-date information, and our list of who is covering what area in risk assessments will be down on the website. So all areas need to have a look at that, because that will give you your key person to contact. But we take very seriously, obviously, our members' health and safety, and risk assessments are being dealt with as a priority. People should not be going back into work, so nothing has changed. So if you're being told you've got to go back into work, then you need to get in touch with either myself or Laura B, and we will tackle that for you, because the advice is still the same. If you can work from home, you work from home, and if you are in work, then you are doing key work and not simply dealing with a backlog of filing or whatever it is that people are saying that they've been given to do. So it's very, very important, because the only way we know about these things in isolated areas is when our members tell us. So please get in touch with us, but do check out the PCS website tomorrow and Friday for that list of reps who are undertaking health and safety inspections.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you, Jackie. Dave Considine from the Border Force. Despite the addition of screens on the PCP, immigration officers on legacy terms, members are still having to ask for masks. Please can representations be made for all BF staff to be issued with them as a matter of health and safety PPE, just like safe boots, etc. So pass that over to James.
Yeah, hi Dave, good to hear from you again. Got his finger on the pulse since leaving. Yeah, we want to, that is something that we keep pushing for and keep pushing for. I mean, we've been pushing for that for a long time, and probably be aware that lots of people were actually Border Force officers were actually being asked to remove face coverings on the PCP. And that is absolutely sort of disgraceful, really, isn't it? And I think there are areas where we'll be having masks issued, but like we want to extend that to as many members as required, and that is something that is one of our top priorities for trying to continue the increase in face mask and face covering provision.
Okay, thanks, James. A few more shout outs here from a few more branches. I don't think I'll get through them all, but there's a message here from Welsh Government saying hi, DWPS, Shire, Dumfries and Galloway, HMPO Belfast, HMPO Durham, and CPS East Mids and Eastern. So hi to all of you, and thanks for tuning in. So we've got plenty more questions, but as I say, keep them coming if there's something you want to raise. The next question is for Jackie. It's from Ahmed Ali in MOJ Midwest, who asks, my question is about the living wage. I'm on the minimum wage now with OCS. A few months ago with G4S, we were taking 22 pence extra. We get the pay rise because you put the pressure on G4S and asked about it. My question is, are you now doing the same with OCS for us? Are you questioning them? We're frontline guards and we deserve a little bit more. So, Jackie.
Hi, thanks for your question. And you're absolutely right. You are very important to the department. And yes, we are pressing for exactly the same, the living wage. And in fact, the pay claim was tabled, I think it was last week, and our campaign to ensure that you get a wage that is reflective of the important work you do is ongoing.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, so there was a question from Peter Kelly, MOJ Cheshire Merseyside, staying with you, Jackie, but also I'm going to ask Steve as well. And it links actually to another question. Peter Kelly is an usher in Liverpool Crown Court, and he asks, we're currently being asked to social distance. How can I be protected whilst carrying out my duties during jury trials, bearing in mind the close proximity I have to have in dealing with jurors? And that's linked very much to a question from Penny Grover, who says she's been an usher for over 10 years in a magistrates court and civil courts. She had to self-isolate in March. Face-to-face will be returning. Will proper PPE be in place? Social distancing and cleanliness of buildings. I've only ever been given an indication of a mask and gel, which wasn't effective in the first place. So really a question for Jackie initially, but I'm going to ask Steve about how that affects members in CPS as well. So over to you, Jackie.
Hi, thanks both of you for your question. So I work as a Crown Court clerk, so I understand entirely the difficulties that social distancing jurors and ushers present. So what we've done is we've asked for screens for ushers. Now, of course, if you are in a jury trial, you can't be trotting around with the screen attached to you. So we've asked for PPE, and to be clear, we're not talking just about a simple face covering. There is a difference between a face mask and a face covering, and we've made it clear that in the circumstances that ushers in particular find themselves in, there is a danger not just from jury trials but from what a potential defendant might present or those who are supporting defendants may present. So we want a proper covering for ushers to protect you properly from any type of incident that has been reported in the press previously from other people in other industries. So we've asked for screens, we've asked for quality PPE equipment, and we've asked obviously that hand sanitizers are not just given out willy-nilly, that they are there all the time. And we've also pushed for the employer to do thermal testing for jurors as they come into the building, because we think that that will help eliminate some of the potential dangers. And on top of that, with the risk assessments, we will be looking very closely at what in a courtroom would be classed as social distancing, given the amount of different people involved in courtrooms. And I'm sure that Steve might want to add to that.
Okay, Steve, obviously an issue for your members as well. Is there anything you want to add?
Yes, thanks, Fran. Yes, definitely for our members that are attending courts in relation to all the issues about distancing and also cleanliness, etc. We have been in regular talks with CPS management over this and over the standing up of jury trials in the Crown Court. And despite the fact that we are still experiencing problems getting copies of court service risk assessments, we have developed and agreed with CPS management, an excellent CPS risk assessment process, which includes a daily safety check. So anybody who has joined us from CPS who is worried about attending court forthcoming, then ask to see the risk assessment, ask to see the safety check, raise any concerns that you've got with your line manager. And as I said in my introduction earlier, if there are still issues that you're not happy with, and if you feel that your safety is compromised as a result of lack of information or any issues that you're aware of in the court, then you can remove yourself from it. You'll obviously need to have a conversation with your line manager, but you know, with reference to the deployment protocol which has been agreed today, and also the preceding excellent risk assessment process that has been not only agreed with the CPS trade union side, but it was predominantly developed by the trade union side in CPS, with the particular input from the PCS COVID-19 team. You know, I think we've got the correct processes in place, but as I said, ultimately, if members feel that your safety is compromised, you do have the agreed right to remove yourself. Thanks, Fran.
Okay, thanks so much, Steve. Okay, another question for James. What, if anything, has the union done about the withdrawal of the retention and recruitment allowance from staff, thereby awarding those currently receiving a pay decrease? And that's from James Delahunt. James.
Yeah, okay. That's about the planned removal of the recruitment retention allowance in Croydon Contact Centre. As an apology, we are actually holding a members meeting tomorrow. I noticed that James's name is not on our membership list for the contact centre, so I can forward on the Skype invitation for the members meeting tomorrow at lunchtime. So I hope you can make it, James. So if not, we'll arrange something else for you. But like, we're looking to try and see, you know, talk to members about what they're willing to do and what they want the response to be in relation to that.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, James. So that's really helpful. Okay, I've got a question for Mark here. HMPO staff are considered to be key workers, but many of us in operational delivery are not working from home. We have had annual pay increases substantially below the rate of inflation imposed for 10 years now. And during this period, we've had the events of 2014, work streams returned to us which were deemed to be outside of our grade. Colleagues have provided support every year. How can the government justify the decision to impose yet another below inflation pay rise, even taking into account coronavirus, when those working in the private sector over the same period have received above inflation pay rises, and MPs have just received an above inflation pay increase of 3.1%. Mark, I know we've touched already on pay, but is there anything you want to say in relation to that? That question comes from Malcolm Stabler from HMPO Northern. Oh, Mark, you're muted.
Okay, so thanks very much for that question, Malcolm. And the way you phrased the question, the union couldn't put it better. Brilliant question, and nobody can justify it. It's the most disgraceful treatment, and the reason that they do it is ultimately because they think they'll be able to get away with it. And I think this is therefore the key to what the union now does. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we believe our members deserve 10%. And that the offer that we've got will be an 11th consecutive pay cut for those who've been around long enough. So what we've got to show the government now is, given how important we are, it's not good enough that they go on telly telling us how brilliant they are, that we're delivering this, that and the other, and then expect us to take a pay cut and all the other changes that you referred to. So what we have to do is show them that members feel strongly. Now, there's an earlier question that referred to the fact that in the last 2 years, we balloted for industrial action. We've had the biggest votes for industrial action in the history of this union, and that's going back 3 decades. But we have fallen a fraction short of the undemocratic laws that now tell us more than half the members must vote. So what we all know is that if the government won't listen to good sense, we have to show them that we're not prepared to put up with it. So if it comes to balloting later in the year, my biggest message to everyone watching this is you must vote, because the more people who vote, the stronger position that we're in. But as I've already said, with so many members working at home, the executive is not going to launch into any ballot straight away. We're going to start campaigning and get members involved in that campaign. But I also want to make this point. We have got our lawyers in, and we are also looking to see whether or not we can take legal action around equal pay legislation, because we have members doing the same work in different departments on vastly different levels of pay. And we're enlisting support in Parliament. We've already had an early day motion, and indeed a question was asked of the Prime Minister at the last Prime Minister's questions about our levels of pay. So the answer is they can't justify it. It's disgraceful behaviour, but they'll try and get away with it. So let everyone watching tell their friends and tell their colleagues, if you're not in a union, join. If you are in a union, sign the petitions, send the emails, attend the meetings when lockdown ends, join any meetings like James just mentioned tomorrow that are on Skype. And the more we get involved and show them we mean business, the more chance we've got of forcing them to change their mind. And think about this as a last point. Just think about what members are doing in the passport office, in the courts, at the borders, with the job retention scheme, paying universal credit. You know, if we really said to them, we're not going to work anymore if we have to have a ballot, they cannot do without us. Now, we don't want a ballot, so let's hope they see reason. But if we have to show them we mean business, make sure you support us, and that's the way we can get fair pay.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Quick shout out, a few more branches here: DWP Sunderland, East Lancs MOJ, Home Office HQ, Sopra Steria, Newport and Liverpool. So welcome to all of you as well. Okay, a question for Jackie then. We are getting through a lot of questions, but there are still an awful lot that have come in. So Jackie, this is from Regina Desange from MOJ Derbyshire, who says, I'm a British Asian and currently following the lockdown procedure guidelines. I'm employed by the Ministry of Justice, HMCTS. My wife has some serious health conditions and is classed as extremely vulnerable by the government. She has had several letters from various organisations about the dangers of COVID-19. She's been told to self-isolate for 12 weeks until the 30th of June, to which she is adhering to, and then to await further guidance from the government. In her latest letter from NHS England, she has been told that she is not to leave the house for exercise or to go shopping. In my last email from work, they have stated that a return to work is imminent. Can you shed some light on this issue that I have, and what should be my next steps?
Hi, thanks for this question, because I think it will resonate with other people who are either listening to Facebook Live or will see it later. So if you are with somebody and you are shielding them, which is really the question, and I know that there have been other courts and tribunals who have asked this question, then nothing has changed for you. You still need to look after the person you're shielding, and if it's possible for you to work from home, you can do that. If you can't do that because you haven't got the equipment, or if it is that your job doesn't allow or doesn't lend itself to working from home, then you are staying at home on special pay. And any attempts to try and remove that from you, you must get in touch with me, and I will investigate that for you. But for anybody out there who is worried because they are shielding or they themselves are vulnerable, you're not going back into the workplace. The date of the, I think is it about the 14th, 13th of June or 16th of June, that was just at the start. It was a 3-month target. We're coming up to reaching that target now, but things haven't actually changed. And so for a lot of people, you will still be vulnerable and you will still need to isolate, and more instructions will go out. But it is important that if you start being pressured by your employer, and particularly if it's the managers in your office that are sending these emails out, it could be that they're misinterpreting a cut-off date of, say, the 16th of June. So please get in touch with us and we will raise that for you at a central level.
Okay, thanks so much, Jackie. And a question for Steve now, from Peter, who is in the Crown Prosecution Service in Sheffield, who asks, how are PCS assurance checking that court attendance is safe for CPS employees expected to attend the workplace?
Okay, thanks, Fran. We are in regular meetings with CPS management in headquarters. We have, as I said earlier, we've agreed a risk assessment and safety check process, and we've said that we are expecting regular feedback from that. Certainly branches at a local level, and I know you're from a very active branch in Yorkshire and Humber, with a lot of good activists in that branch. What we are expecting is that there's local dialogue between area management and the trade union side in relation to those safety checks that should be being carried out on a daily basis, and the generic risk assessment, as I said earlier, which has been agreed at a departmental level within CPS. We're also expecting regular feedback with the regular updates with any significant findings from those risk assessments and safety checks back via the Departmental Health and Safety Committee, where from a group perspective, we've got group executive committee members that play an active part in that committee, and there is, as you've no doubt seen, regular briefings going out to members and to branches. So there is regular communications between the group and between branches, and there should be a dialogue both at a local level, and there is certainly at a departmental level between departmental management and the trade union side, including the PCS union. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks very much, Steve. One for James from Kenny McCrum in HMPO Northern Ireland, who says, unfortunately for staff in HMPO Belfast, we have no rep from the beginning of the pandemic due to sickness. We're feeling a little abandoned, frightened and vulnerable at the moment. My question is this: why are Belfast managers increasing the number of staff in the office to way above the agreed 30% quota? It has already been very difficult to social distance in our office when 30% of staff have been at work. So this week, and even more so next week, it will simply be unsafe. Please help us to have a voice and stay safe. So, James, I don't know if you can give some reassurance there.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly, sorry. Yeah, I think, I understand what happened at the start in Belfast, and I think it is very difficult, and we are adapting to a new way of working when a lot of our reps are at home or potentially sick or shielding. So it has been difficult for us, and I think we've tried to put things in place. I know the National Union has launched a COVID line that can be called, or emails that can go in be centrally dealt with. But also, we hope that people can contact the Home Office group as well through centralised emails that are available. But sorry, members are feeling in that way. The other thing is, of course, we're always looking for new reps to come forward and to help out as well. But the numbers in Belfast, I mean, at the moment are below the maximum that human applications have indicated. But what we're really keen on, and what we've launched in the Home Office group, is a reporting tool for where members are feeling that the health and safety or the social distancing isn't working, and they can report that centrally through a link on the PCS website, and those will go to local negotiators so they can actually deal with those locally. Although there are planned increases in some of the offices, those are predicated on the situation actually working currently. And if there are problems with social distancing, then we need to raise that. We need to have members reporting back to us what those issues are, whether they're queues at the toilet or outside the building to get in, or not being able to social distance in restrooms or break out areas. And that reporting tool is really important for us, so we can circulate that afterwards. It was in one of the MBs that we published, MB 23, if you know your MVs sort of by number, and loads of you know, we're really keen on dealing with that. So.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, James. We are running out of time, and clearly there are still lots and lots of questions that we will seek to get an answer to you over. But there's just, in closing, probably a couple of questions from Mark that I think we should probably pick up before we finish. Just before we do, there's a few more branches that want to give a shout out. So they are Revenue and Customs Euston Tower, Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority branch, and PCS DFE Group, all of whom say hi to everybody on the call. Okay, so Mark, Gordon Nugent from the Department for Transport DVLA asks, some time ago PCS were compensated by a government department, it was the DWP actually, who had tried to shut down pay and PCS subs with payroll deduction. What are PCS, where are PCS in seeking similar compensation from other government departments? So Mark, I don't know if you just want to comment on that one.
Yeah, it's a great question, and indeed we did receive £3 million in compensation from the DWP. So where we're at now is that we have now proceeded with our legal case in the Home Office, and we have consulted our lawyers, and the intention now is to proceed over the course of the next few months against every other department that we've taken advice on, and simultaneously approach the Cabinet Office to encourage them to jointly settle all of these cases in one go, because we keep winning them, and when we win them, it usually costs the government up to £500,000 in our legal costs, and then they have to pay us compensation. They acted unlawfully, it cost the union a great deal of money, they should put that right, and if they're not prepared to do that peacefully, then we will be proceeding with these legal cases, and the Home Office one has already started.
Okay, thanks so much, Mark. And obviously, due to the time, this is going to have to be the last one, but I think obviously very topical at the moment. There was a rather unexpected tweet from the official UK Civil Service Twitter account over the weekend, and I wonder, Mark, if there's anything you would like to comment on in relation to that as the sort of close of this Facebook Live event.
Well, I will actually. It's a great question, and actually, I think whoever did the tweet, I think was speaking for hundreds of thousands of civil servants and for millions of people in this country. I mean, we've sat here, and I want to thank you, Jackie, James, and Steve, because our members are fielding questions that tell us about their real concerns, about their safety, about their pay, and about their futures. And here we have a government and a chief advisor who did not follow their own rules. And not only do they not follow their own rules, they then treat us like we are fools. I mean, anyone who has got dodgy eyesight, who decides to drive a car to a beauty spot, I think that is really taking the mickey out of people's intelligence. It's an arrogant behavior that actually tells us that people think that they can do what they want. And as some of the questions tonight have put, you know, that's what they think they can do to us on pay, and that's what they think they can do to us on other things. We have to show them that they can't. And I want to really finish by saying that tweet spoke for millions of us. So now let's show millions of us make the government do the right thing. Next week, Fran, we're having a joint meeting with National Education Union, the RNT and others, where we will be working with all our friends in other unions to keep their members safe as well as ours. That shows we're working across the board with other unions. Tomorrow, we've got all our MPs meeting in Parliament, and some of the questions that people have posed tonight, if we can, we'll try and get those raised in our parliamentary group, because raising these things in Parliament puts extra pressure on ministers, and I want to thank people and urge people to keep getting in touch. But the very last thing, Fran, I wanted to say is that what tonight has demonstrated, as it did last time, is that, you know, the union is negotiating and negotiating hard, but in every office there are different circumstances, sometimes managers who get it wrong, where people are not getting the treatment they deserve. We can only take that up if we know about it. So I want to encourage everyone to do what they've been asked tonight. Tell us, contact us, go to your rep, contact our helpline, and we will take it up. And do look out for the 5 tests. Because when the 5 tests come out over the coming days, what I want everyone watching tonight to do is to look at the tests, and they apply to you whether you're in work, whether you've been at home working or you're on special leave. And if you don't feel that those tests are met for you, contact the union and the union will try and do something about it. And I can guarantee to you that we will take that up with management. But what I'm going to urge you to do is, where the management don't put it right, us campaigning together locally as well as nationally is the way that we can get justice. So it's been a great meeting. Thanks to everyone from MOJ, from the CPS and the Home Office, and everyone else who's watching. As I said earlier, we will do many. But the union standing together, all of us, we keep the country running. And if they're going to treat us in the way that they're threatening to treat us, let's stand together and not let them get away with it. So thanks very much, Fran, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, thanks, Mark. In closing, can I also echo the thanks to our panelists, because, you know, you're put on the spot a bit with some of the questions, but I think everybody's done really well in trying to answer those. I want to apologise to people who submitted questions that didn't get picked up. They've come thick and fast throughout the whole meeting, and in the hour we had, we were never going to get through all of them, but hopefully we've addressed a good few, and the ones we haven't, we will seek to get an answer to you as soon as possible. And I also want to give a shout out to our signer, Richard, for the sterling job he does in terms of signing throughout this event. And I know some of us speak fast and some of us use phrases that aren't altogether familiar sometimes, and I think, Richard, we owe you a big thank you for the work that you're doing as well. So thanks ever so much for joining in. Thanks for submitting your questions. I hope you got some answers, and clearly we will be doing more of these events for different groups of members as things continue. So stay safe, and I hope that everybody has got something out of this evening's event. Thank you very much and good evening.